I signed up to join the army when I was sort of 15, 16 years old, and then didn't actually physically go to Sandhurst until I was 23. And at the time I was, identifying as male in my life, even though I kind of knew in the background that something wasn't quite right. And then, after a couple of years, the feelings cemented, they got stronger and stronger, and I realised that I could no longer live in that way. And I decided to come out to the army, come out to some of my friends and family, and start my transition to become the woman that I knew I was.
And what was it like going through that transition in what many would perceive to be a very macho environment?
It was really positive, actually. The army are genuinely really good. No one can quite believe me when I say that, but they really are. Do you mean the sort of hierarchy in the army? Just everyone in general. There's a kind of perceived kind of idea that the army are a very sort of masculine, macho organisation, but actually they're very forward-thinking. And whether it be the people who work for me, my peers, my colleagues, or the people who command me in the army chain of command, they've all been really, really positive and just seen it as something that allows me to be who I am and frees up my kind of emotional energy to concentrate on work and doing the job that they employ me for.
You're the most senior transgender person in the army, but
That's correct.
by no means the only transgender person.
No, not at all, no.
I know that you actually work with other transgender people within the army. How many do you get involved with?
So I'm the transgender representative for the British Army, which involves mentoring all of our transgender soldiers, as well as kind of providing education to the people who command them, and also advising the army on its policy to make sure that it's fit for purpose. Now, so we have a whole spectrum of people, across the ranks and across the different types of being transgender within the army, and all of them are just getting on with their lives and just doing their jobs as a soldier.
I want to bring you an email from Claire. She says, the army still has no support for transgendered veterans. I spent 15 years being bullied, physically punished and treated like a complete freak because of my gender. That still has not gone away. And the age group I live with still feel the same. What today's society has achieved is fantastic, but many people forget how we were treated in the 80s and 90s. What do you think the MOD can do to repair the damage done to transgendered veterans who served this country but lived in fear of their lives from colleagues more than the enemy?
I'm not sure, it's probably not my place to say what the MOD should do specifically in terms of transgender veterans, but I am acutely aware that we live in a generational age where things are much better. I've been on record before saying that I wouldn't be here telling you about this really positive experience if it wasn't for those people who came out in the military, in years gone by and had to suffer hardships because the education wasn't there in the wider society, in the wider UK, that the army could tap into. And so, the army is very much leading the way as it is now in making sure that transgender employment is possible. But at the same time, they've taken that from the entire society, which has moved on. And it will always be a generational thing, I think.
And what do you credit for the change that there has been? Has it been high profile, transgender people just taking the issue out there in a way that wasn't there before on the general radar?
I don't think in terms of society in general.
And I mean, obviously specifically to your experience as well, and you talk about it being a generational thing. What has changed?
I think it's like we've got our foot in the door. There was a lot of, going back, trans in the media was particularly bad representation, very sensationalised, whereas now that we're starting to hear much more true and representative trans stories, and also seeing the full spectrum of being transgender, which isn't just a binary male or female, but people in the middle, people who consider themselves non-binary or don't identify with male or female. And because we're getting these true representations of people, people are starting to understand. And once you understand something, you can start to accept it. And we're not all the way there yet. We're still seeing some sensationalised stories, we're still seeing some misrepresentation and people not understanding that there's a long way to go in terms of transgender civil rights. But we are getting there. And the fact that we are having more and more people visible, more role models, and there are more people to look up to and go, actually, I can identify with that person, that's kind of like me. And therefore they can feel comfortable knowing that their identity is valid. And I think that is something that will always take time. And, we are victim to our beliefs and things we're taught as children, and I think the children of today's generation are seeing a much more open and understanding view of what gender is and what it means to be male or female.
And just very quickly, final thought, you're getting this award. How important is that to you?
It's a huge honour for me. I'm very, very grateful for it. I think it's a nice marker in the sand that trans women are being recognised along other women in this award ceremony.